Hey,
Hello.
Roman. Hello.
Hi, Roman. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Busy days. How are you?
Same. I don't know what's up with February. It's very, very busy all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, finally I'm now in the right call, right?
I think so.
It's so confusing. Yeah, last week or the week before I joined, actually, the yet another CCC call, and I'm supposed to talk about all of these things like standards and engagement with the policy and etc. But they were talking about golf relationships, and this we got, oh wow, this is the wrong one, another SIG. And then I dived into the chat and figured out that the meetings were not set up yet at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we got a little late start this year because we finally got, the charter approved mid last week, and I had some travel, so I'm still like playing catch up to make sure everybody's got the
Mhm.
content that we want to talk through. So yeah, I apologize. We've been a little behind the ball, but going forward, we'll be every 2 weeks, pretty diligent. What, where are you based?
I am based in beautiful Ireland, in
Oh,
Dublin area.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice,
Where are you?
nice. Portland, Oregon, so West Coast. Nice and gray and rainy and yeah, pretty traditional for this time of year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never been to Portland, Oregon, despite the fact that I worked at about 5 years for Intel.
Oh,
And yeah, had multiple invitations, but sometimes, but at the times, everything went wrong, like COVID and other things. But
right.
sometimes I would really love to visit the city and yeah, meet some friends over there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if there's ever excuse to host something for this SIG, we'll try to do it here because I'm lazy and I don't mind hosting. I like hosting. So, uh,
Right, right,
oh,
right.
cool. Let me ping Mike, see if he's joining. I think it might be really light this first one. There's a lot of folks that expressed interest but had conflicts with today. Uh,
Yeah, and I can't promise to stay the entire call, but I'll try to at least be at this at the beginning.
yeah, sure. As long as we get enough quorum that we could try to at least review our approved charter. That's like the one thing that's the top of my list. But we've already got a project that we need to
Hmm.
take on. We already have some relationships that we need to work with, particularly around different regulators around the world. And yeah, getting to know this small team and how best to work together to sort of move a mission forward. Hey, Michael. Hey, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I joined as guest. So
All right, cool.
I'll
Whatever,
figure
whatever
that
it
out
takes.
afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to get the charter into the GitHub today, and I just realized that I don't have my fob with me. So I'm like, crap, I can't post it in Markdown. And then I tried to post the agenda into the Slack channel, and Google's security just says no.
Yeah.
So so you'll have to look at my screen for the agenda today, I guess, and we'll go
Cool.
from there. So, um, hi, Mark.
Hey,
Hey,
Mark.
good morning, Mr. Guzman. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Good to hear from you again. I thought I'd join
Yeah.
this one. I'm not sure how much time I can spend on it because there's always that conflict, but you managed to
Right.
pick a slot, which isn't too bad. Um, but I thought I'd listen in because there's been a few developments on the regulatory front. I wanted to go with you too. So good stuff.
Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Yeah. Welcome.
Sounds good.
Wi-Fi
Welcome.
changeover. Hang on, it may cut out. So
No worries.
good to meet you.
Meet you as well. All right, so I think we got four. I think that's good enough to get started. Michael, you and I have, not had a chance to get caught up last week, which I was hoping to do, but whatever.
No worries.
This is trial by fire, right?
Yep.
So I put together an agenda. It's on the shared screen. We can adjust as we go, but I think it'd be good to sort of, this is our first inaugural, meeting. I want to cover a couple key things around sort of what the mission, and of course the charter has some specific goals that we laid out, and I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with them, and then take feedback if there's any adjustments we want to make to the core charter, we want to get it out of the way right away. Otherwise, we're just going to sort of move ahead with the mission. There's already a project that's on our plate, and there's probably a couple different activities that this team needs to sort of help us figure out how to take on, particularly around interacting with some specific regulators. ANSI being in France, they've been a sort of thorn in a couple of people's sides already around their opinion of confidential compute, and that unfortunately affects lots of different things for the vendors in our groups. So there's quite a bit to get into, but first off, I think some of us know each other, not all of us know everybody. So I figured what I'd do is sort of kick it off, a couple minutes of introductions. We have only a handful of folks today, and that's fine. And I think we'll pick it up as we go in the next round, just adding other folks coming in. I know Nelly had expressed interest in joining, but I don't think she can make it today. So with that, me and Michael introduce ourselves first, as the chair and vice chair of the group. A little bit about myself. I'll keep it less than 30 seconds, and hopefully we can all do similar. I've been around confidential computing environments since the 90s. I was doing HSMs and TEEs at the CIA. I did a lot of work around how do we do things like data classification while still having these things like administrators in our network. And TEEs were really helpful in that, me to actually say, hey, on this side of the wall, there is no privilege. We want to make sure we remove those controls as best we can. I currently work out at Google, so I got recruited in here about 3 years ago. Prior to that, I was at a company called Talus, which makes HSMs, and before that, I was at a couple startups. One of them that got acquired by Talus. My focus pretty much throughout the day here at Google is trusted, regulated, and sovereign systems. So that includes HSM systems. I do a lot of go-to-market in Europe. These last couple of years has been pretty hot for sovereignty. Like, let me have the control and keep it inside my ecosystem or inside my data centers, but still use the cloud. So it's interesting for me. Confidential compute is really, a great architectural component that we can rely upon to use over and over again for different types of use cases. But there's got to be some kind of standards and regulatory approach to make it more acceptable for common use cases beyond, the 2 or 3 that I've seen so far. So that's me, and that's my mission is to just make this thing more approachable and more of a common component. Michael.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Guzman. I work at JP Morgan. I know at least one person on this call besides Solon. So I came to confidential computing about 4 years ago. When I first learned of it, the AWS's version of it, which isn't really confidential computing, but we'll leave that to the side for right now. But really thought about it, how it can help solve for some of the big challenges that we have in the financial services and highly regulated space, and we're sharing our data with vendors and other customers. But once it leaves our domain, how are we actually ensuring the security of it? And so I looked into confidential computing and saw the promise of it around the hardware-based root of trust and attestation, and thought this is going to be how we move forward in computing. Especially as we adopt things like AI and leveraged workspaces. So a lot of my passion is around helping to bridge that conversation between auditors and regulators and security engineering and development groups. That I've built kind of a career on that. Prior to coming back to JP Morgan, I spent 4 years at AWS doing as a PCI QSA, helping companies rationalize their implementation to meet DSS requirements. And then before that, I worked at JP Morgan, helping to build architectures that were in the payment space that were constantly under analysis. I authored quite a few papers on tokenization and hashing and how these implementation patterns can be used to limit scope and meet regulatory compliance. And so that's why I'm kind of passionate about this little conversation that we're going to start up here as part of this. That's me. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm Roman and I work for Red Hat currently. I'm not in the confidential computing for that many years like you guys, but I worked at Intel before and touched a little bit in SGX and TDX. And now I am engaged more and more with our Red Hat's confidential computing efforts, which are largely around confidential containers, but also confidential VMs and confidential clusters as well. But I'm in security for 20 plus years generally, and most recently spending the time on the securing supply chains, secure development sides, and all of these things. My kind of liaisons into the regulatory and standards, I am heavily engaged into the things like Cyber Resiliency Act here in Europe. I'm part of the official expert groups and all of these national standardization bodies that are driving this effort, but also trying to expand my kind of view on the things like sovereignty, right, and AI, and regulations around them. And we understand now that confidential computing is one of the pieces that is for rescue for all of these things to make it happen within the regulated environments. But also it's very important to work with the standards bodies, not only with the regulators, but with the standards and with the entities like ANSI and others that are more providing the guidances and standards around confidential computing. And my goal is to try to help again bridge the real technical experts, those regulatory bodies and community to make sure we do provide the right feedback, and yeah, we make it right for the benefits of the community and ultimately for our customers, of course. That's about me. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Mark, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, happy to be here. Nice to meet you. And I think we've all got a common vision and backgrounds. I am at Anjuna Security. I run product and go-to-market. So I work with a lot of customers. Do work on the standards body stuff as well. Long history in that, actually. So years ago, I did work with Etsy on some of the SMG9 standards, which were for the very early confidential compute, aka smart cards that ran multiple operating systems on chip cards, so tiny little VMs on those things. But my most recent relevant work, I helped co-chair the PCI Council tokenization working group way back, and that's when we had that sort of original guidance that came out about scope reduction. Worked with NIST on new AES modes, so format preserving encryption, NIST 853. 800-38 standard, 38G, I think it is. So worked on both kind of like the standards, as in kind of core standards, as well as influencing standards bodies as well. I also co-chair the CSA working group for confidential computing, which is really largely focusing on educational sort of efforts as well. So it's kind of ground up work. So yeah, happy to be here. Background is technical. I was at AWS, ran payments cryptography there before jumping over to Anjuna as well. So come from the HSM world, the chip side, and then getting this technology into people's hands. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you, Mark. Mike, I think we've met once before, at least in one of those roles you had.
Pretty sure. Yeah, I think so at Thales, actually, probably when I was at Voltage Security, because I used to run product there, and we had a pretty big partnership. So indeed. Good stuff.
All right, Abe, that was it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Ab Nassef. I'm Director of Product Management at AMD. In the Product Security Office, which is the R&D group for security at AMD. A lot of my focus is on confidential computing for many years now. I would say definitely less than all of you guys, but about 5-6 years with working with the major cloud vendors, hyperscalers, and others. Mark, I think we met at the CC Summit last year. So my interest is really on basically making the world aware of confidential computing, why they need confidential computing. So I'm wearing multiple hats in the CCC as well. Like I represent an AMD in the outreach committee, and I'm second as well on the governing board to the primary, my boss, basically. So really I look after the roadmap of confidential computing technologies at AMD across multiple product lines. So hopefully, I'm based in Toronto. Those interesting. So geographically.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Cool. I am pulling up a link because unfortunately I haven't quite figured out how to get my Google Docs to work with everybody else's Google Docs. They don't share apparently. Let's see. I got a chat here. So I have a link to a GitHub repo, and I can share my screen on that first. So this is just a quick review. I think some of you've already seen this. It went through the governing board and was approved, and I would like to use this moment to sort of get everybody's initial feedback. If we need to make any major changes, we can. I think what we'd want to do though is, if we can, try to ratify this first version and then do a subsequent version after. Share the screen. Okay. Sorry for the dark theme. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. So those that can, feel free to weigh in. I'm not going to read this to you. I'll let you sort of peruse it at yours. I think the parts that are pretty important from what I heard from everybody's introductions is what's sort of in scope for us and what's sort of out scope, along with our mission. And I think, Michael, did you want to weigh in and anything that you thought was pretty critical for us to tie to from the charter?
No, I think there's is primarily what's in scope, what's out of scope. We kind of made it all about the standards and regulatory bodies and how we can help influence them on dimensioning confidential computing and the benefits of it, and how it should possibly what metrics we should use to state what is confidential computing versus what isn't. And yeah, I think those are the primary, and then the rest of the document around, what we hope to achieve and how we plan on measuring that.
One question I've got, and I'll have a look at this in more detail later if there's a link to share or whatever, because I'm sorry I'm out and about. But you noted at the beginning the kind of the objections you're getting from like ANSI, for example. Is it meaningful to sort of anticipate the kinds of objections or myths, if you will, and articulate examples of those here as a part of the mission? It's like dispelling myths such as.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing with regulators in general. I mean, I think you all have different experience in this. I'll lean into your knowledge as well, but they don't know what to put down for people to measure against until there's some amount of maturity or understanding or failures around them. And unfortunately, places like ANSI have sort of seen some limitations or some kind of compromise they didn't like, and they end up making these blanket decisions, which is like, well, there's a lot of nuance there, and what you actually know, that was one release, the next release is taken care of. It's like stuff like that. I think we're gonna have a lot of like evangelizing the technology above and beyond the implementations.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges with the tech is that with it being so open for the right reasons, especially about all of the quote unquote attacks and compromises and whatnot, which you don't get in closed systems. That is its double-edged sword. It makes it more secure, but it increases doubt. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think it is. We have to dispel the myths. I think we need to create really sort of like clear and rigid pillars that are holding up some truth that we all agree to. I don't know what mechanisms we're going to use to try to like normalize this across the different approaches, the different perspectives. But you're spot on. Like there's myth as well out there that unfortunately, once it's out there, you got to deal with it. It doesn't go away.
Sorry, Mark, can you clarify a little bit what we mean by myth in this context? I apologize.
Well, not necessarily. It's there's a tendency for amplification of the negative and then people reading in without the context of what the actual risk is, right? So sometimes there's a risk that, yes, you absolutely have to be very mindful of this. But then in other cases, there's a risk of, especially when you're talking about some of the side channel stuff, you have to understand the context of it to really understand what the threat actually is. And there's a tendency for, broad brush media strokes on things to say, doom and gloom, it's game over, thou shalt never use this technology ever again. and that is the myth that I'm talking about. It's the myth of this is all, game over, when in actual fact it's a strengthening posture to know where your weaknesses are in order to be able to defend against them, and then use the right kinds of controls, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah, no,
that's kind of what I was leaning in on.
I'm sorry, but you mentioned a specific example. I misheard. I couldn't hear it. Sorry. Earlier.
No, I didn't mention anything specific.
Sorry. Okay.
No.
No, wait, there is
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
The part you're referring to there is there recently was an opinion. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's an opinion that was published by ANSI on confidential compute. Literally, while I was sitting at the NATO desk in NATO having a conversation with 32 countries about encryption, key management, and confidential compute, and the ANSI rep that wrote the guy was right in front of me, and so I spent like 5 minutes with them trying to understand what's the problem. And they're like, well, we are the point that they're making is it's not the technology, is that technology doesn't allow you to implicitly trust the operator of that technology. Still, in their mind, there's still a risk of the operator. So it's stuff like that where like, but that's not what the other 31 countries heard. They heard confidential compute bad, don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, basically,
Yep.
like that, the fact that the hypervisor like basically could access or have access to information or.
Yeah, I mean, the technical, limitations that they saw or published or something I don't have on the top of my head, but I would say it's this way, like in their perception, if you have the box and there's a box inside the box, you have to trust the person that's holding the box still. Whereas, at Google, for example, and I'm sure the other hypervisors would say similar things, like we want to have the box on the outside that has a box on the inside that we don't control. And we want to rely upon that to say, you have confidentiality. I have no administrative rights. We're all good. We can call it sovereignty if you wanted to, but it's some kind of separation that we need to get to, and I'm sure others want to, because the box inside the box, that's the promise of confidential from our perspective.
Yeah, if I may, just one point on that, like at least in the US, and you guys probably know that or had experienced that more than I do. Especially being in Canada, but our CTO had the opportunity to, he came back from a meeting at DC, and he's literally some of the people were like really discovering confidential computing as a concept, which was kind of, I mean, sometimes and that's one of the things that personally, again, I'm not like, just from the awareness perspective as well, like there's work and we're trying to do a better job in the outreach committee. And I would highly recommend that we, whenever we can communicate the outside and having the voice of the CCC out. I know that's not the mission of this is the outreach committee, but there's the committee. That's their job, is to get the word out. I think because everybody's working on confidential computing, we know what. I wouldn't say we're a bubble, but like, yeah, we live and breathe that day in, day out. But outside of that, we need to get more awareness. So.
Yeah, I mean that's why the CSA group exists as well. For exactly that reason, it's kind of like up leveling it into a business conversation.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, my experience has been, especially with auditors and regulators, if they don't understand the intent of the technology, they default to the worst case scenario on it. And so part of this is meant to really help educate that space, because I see, internally, I see a lot of conversations center around, well, I'm passing my audits now. Why would I want to do this? And that frustrates the hell out of me, because, it isn't about what's today in front of you. It's about what's coming tomorrow. And it's going to hit us. So having guidance from the regulatory bodies that they are, and you see it in some of them, right? You see it in the Monetary Authority of Singapore has it, mention of it. GDPR has mention of it. You see it in some of these other regulators. They're starting to become aware of it. So we want to help influence that articulation within their space. So when we're trying to get people to adopt this, it becomes a much easier conversation, I think, around why they want to do it.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent. Let's see what we're about.
But very quickly. I just had to literally. I was kind of as browsing the document. At least I got down to the the scope and out of the scope. So apologize. It's like the first time I copied the link, so I'll read it afterward.
Sure.
But it looks to me that's really yeah, makes sense to me. I don't know if you want to formalize
That's what I was
like
about to do.
yeah.
is hey, unless there's any like bleeding problems with it, which I think we were pretty good coverage already. I propose that we, formally approve and ratify, and I've already got a PR that I'm not ready to hit the button on. Actually, you're looking at it, so I want to make sure it gets approved and pulled in. Any objections?
We should probably formalize. Like I probably propose in second, so it's just kind of I propose to accept it.
Sure.
Anybody to
Any
second?
second?
I
Any
second
seconds?
it.
Thanks.
Sounds good. We are approved. Excellent. I will put that down. Next is infrastructure. So we've got the mailing list and the Slack channel, pretty standard stuff. As I said, I'll figure out what the hell's wrong with my my docs, and I've got a couple of different Google Docs that I'll share with the group as well.
Check with Ria, and he will help you because
Yeah.
there is a whole Google Docs for CCC.
Yeah, it's on my to-dos today. Because I was trying to do too much with only one cup of coffee this morning, so I apologize. The strategic discussion. This is the part where we'll probably take the majority of the rest of our call today. Those that need a balance, I totally understand. But there is a proposed document that was sent out from Nellie, or at least she's the one that handed it to me. So I know that the TAC and some other groups have taken a look at this already. So looking for a confidential compute sort of framework, the assurance framework, as a way of really not only solving measurements of how confidential are you, or what are all the pieces that are in place for this particular configuration or technology or implementation. So I read through it a couple times last week. I felt it was a pretty good project for us to take on and really make sure that we're looking at the part that's in scope for us, because there's a lot of it that would not be for us, but there's a chunk of this, which is the 7 sort of assurance objectives themselves. And then there's some levels that go with that, and making sure that we're properly aligning our, our sort of interests and scope of influencing and really directing the regulatory and standards bodies through something like this framework. I think it'll be really helpful to have something like this. I think most of the content that I saw around it so far and the comments around it so far seem pretty supportive and aligned with the idea of using a sort of a scorecard. Most regulators love scorecards. I'm not saying that's a good thing necessarily, but if you give them the scorecard versus them figuring out how to do it themselves, it's a radically different thing. So the proposal is this is one of our first projects that comes onto our plate, specifically around reviewing it, evaluating the levels, probably doing a little bit of tabletop exercise around how do we align these technical capabilities with strategic governance and regulatory priorities. So it's not going to be a one-time thing. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation, but we need to start someplace, and there might be some just low-hanging fruit regulatory and standards bodies that this would be applicable or appropriate for us to go and approach them with. That might be ANSI. I don't know if that's the right one to go after, but there could be some that this group can help prioritize, because we need to do this as a sort of a holistic approach versus trying to take on just one given type of regulator by industry or by nation or by governance. So I'll pause there. I don't know if anybody else has had a chance to look at it already. I didn't send out any pre-read yet, but it is on our plate as of this morning.
Oh, you mean the CCIF, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I did read it, and even like shared internally with a couple of architects. I don't know if we want to go like some initial comments. I put some comments in the document itself, but I don't know. I'll leave others to comment if how we want to proceed.
I don't have any comments on the document. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to fully digest it yet.
Okay.
So I have it on my to-dos for today.
Yeah, is there a link?
Yeah, it's in the agenda, but I will put that in here.
Okay.
Yeah, and where's the link to agenda doc?
Yeah, exactly. It's in the link to the link to the link that I can't get to you, but I'll put it in here. I can give you the internal doc.
Okay. Where is the agenda? So I don't get it.
It's Google Doc that I cannot seem to share outside of mine. Let's see here.
So it's in your enclave.
It is. I do like enclaves. I use them a lot. All right, so there's the file, and then
Yeah, I just requested permission.
these are all my problems that I have to sort out with Rayon.
Yeah, I have the same problem with the CSA stuff. It gets awkward.
Yeah. All right, I just sent that. Okay. Yeah, I think from a content perspective, I also have read through it a couple times, but I wouldn't say I'm. I think there might be some opportunity for some slight tweaks, and I think we probably want to get us as a group to sort of agree or disagree if we think so as well. So there's one that was sort of caught me, sort of up front is we're bundling a lot of different types of technologies into confidential computing, from a technical implementation standpoint, which might be different. So like the Nitro is not the same as AMD or Intel or others in their approach, right? What would you consider the difference between them, right? One's sort of an extension, the other one's sort of a core. Like this is just fundamentally you can run confidential computing in a core approach versus adding things on, like a GPU might be considered an extension as well. So I sort of, at least in my mind, and I'm not trying to take a technical approach, I'm trying to make it so that if we're going to go into a regulatory body like NIST or anybody else, like when you go to NIST and you're trying to use, something like computational compute for a crypto module, which I'm sure Mark, you and your team, know pretty well. When you do crypto modules, it's very dry. It's very specific set of requirements that you have to go through. And so you end up, I'm sure, education, and I know folks did this at, what was that company? Fortanix as well. Like they're using a couple pieces together to create a crypto module. So the foundational piece versus a ancillary, extension that still is confidential, but it's not a compute engine itself by itself on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only thing that caught me sort of like, when I read through it, it's like a GPU, confidential GPU is not the same as a confidential CPU. And the threats, the use cases, they're all radically different. So that's just something that I caught in the document. We don't have to do anything with this document today. We just should probably all take the action to read it, comment, come back with thoughts on it in the next round. But that's sort of the first thing that sort of landed on our plate before we even formed the group yet. So which is good. Something to do.
I was wondering about, so forgive my ignorance on this, but I thought there was already a TAC that was kind of teasing that all out. It's not the standards TAC. Sorry, I'm trying to remember the name.
No,
of it.
there's a tag and there's the SIGs under the tag. So GRC.
Oh, sorry, so you're right. Yeah, so I thought the GRC group underneath Mark Novak was kind of teasing that all out already. And maybe I'm incorrect on that, but that's where I thought it would be.
I think
maybe a better coordination on just taking what they're having and then using that as what we're going to advocate out versus designing. But
if I may, I think so the GRC SIG is under TAC. This SIG is under governing board. My feeling from Nelly when I talked to her and Mike Bursell as well, obviously the scope that you that was defined in what you presented, Solomon, was really great, and I'm okay with it. It felt more like outbound as opposed to, and maybe that's not necessarily the intention, but as opposed to really the tag and the GRC SIG, that really, well, technical and like more into the standardization or at least with definition. That's the feeling I had. But again, I think in any
I think
case,
that's the
what
accurate
this,
feeling.
yeah,
That
exactly.
was my
But
intention when writing the charter, was kind of, it was more outward facing. How are we advocating for this in that space, taking
yeah,
what the other SIGs and groups are creating within the Linux Foundation?
which to me indicates, and I'll shut up after that, which indicates to me that we definitely need some way of syncing with the TAC itself, or at least with the chair, and the vice chair, and anyway, sync with the TAC and the GRC SIG, so we are all, on the same page. I know it sounds obvious, but um, we need a way of syncing, even if it's offline by email, it doesn't matter. But I think all of these things are, one is primarily in within the CCC, and our work seems to be more outbound. But it should build on whatever the TAC and the GRCC and the TAC is doing. Anyway, that's my suggestion. I don't know what others think.
No, that's fine with me. I mean, I also saw it similar where this was meant to be a outbound. I'll use the word outbound. I mean, it's really meant to be to the individual, targeting the right regulatory bodies and standard bodies that we as a collective CCC know, and the governing board know, that we want to make sure we get them to the table with us to understand and create frameworks like this for acceptance. So yeah, I think it's an outbound. I think it's outbound. I think it's definitely, we are the advertising arm of this to that set of groups. So cool. All right, so let's just take the action to all digest, and we'll promote this to anybody else that shows up as well, and come back with thoughts and comments on it next week or a week after, 2 weeks, fortnightly. All right. What was next? We had, yeah, I think we one of the last things that was on that list of soliciting feedback for the next iteration of the framework to ensure it's vendor agnostic. So I think, we should probably make sure that we do comment and come back between now and 2 weeks from now with anything that we want to pass back up to the TAC on this. And last bit, so there's 2 other action items that I had. One was responding to the UK Secure AI infrastructure call for information. I think that was Mike when he was talking with us a couple of weeks ago, Michael. And then the other one is discuss reaching out to bodies like NC. So I guess we should take that second one. I think is the higher priority for me. I think it would be good for us to collect a hit list, is probably the wrong word, but like a list of target regulatory bodies that we know we can get to with either the connections in this room, or that we could pull together with our collective resources, the CCC and the member companies. So there's a couple different ways for us to look at sort of the scope of that, or which ones are the highest priority. I think it's usually going to be the nationals seem to have the most impact to enterprises and government agencies that work within them. So NIST, BSI in Germany, there's 10. There's a top 10. It's pretty easy to go after. One other thing it's worth exploring. I don't know if it's the right path, but quite often in things like so I'll use BSI as an example. In Germany, they have a product approval process for key management systems. It's very specific. It just got released last year, but it's 95% common criteria. It's like the same tools you would use, the same teams, like almost all of it's common criteria. And then I see the same thing in Moss and Singapore. So like the common criteria is a common denominator across a lot of these, either CC specific or derivatives like you see in BSI and stuff. So there could be some merit there, and just more C's to add to the confrontation in a given day. But common criteria might be one of those things that we look at as sort of transcends a specific nation and creates a profile. Now, to do that, there is a whole community and a whole governing body around how CC is sort of managed across the different jurisdictions. They're all different, yet they find some common ground. So it's something that's, I think, worth exploring. Like maybe that's one of the directions we push the TAC and others is let's create a security target for a common criteria approach that sort of transcends vendors and transcends nations. So those are the two that come to my mind. Like there's the nationals, and then there's a common criteria, and then there's going to be industry specific stuff like PCI and stuff like that. I don't know if that's even relevant to talk about, but like, of course it is. Of course, the banking says so. No, I was sort of being facetious at the same time. Like industry specific ones, I think we have to just think through those too. Like they all have priority. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get the most bang for our buck, or are we just trying to create a pattern that we can repeat over and over again? Because they're all different, right?
Yeah.
So two things about the well, two comments about the global the scope or what we should kind of address in the last governing body board meeting last Wednesday. There was some mention of like basically similar to what ISO is, right? It's almost like basically it's as global as possible. Okay, and we understand the specificities of especially on a topic like this for whether regions or like the EU or blocks like the EU or specific countries, but to be as global as standard close to something like an ISO as possible. I know that's not the end goal. That's one comment. So I guess I'm agreeing with you. So that's one thing. I think the part that maybe I can keep that maybe the next comment. I think what hit me as well because the version before I read like right now of the document, I'll put the comment as well there. I think I'm a little bit concerned about and this is something that we should I don't know, I personally will put the comment on the document. To give you an example, and this is not in no way, shape, or form like comment about the vendor specifically, but like the CCC definition of confidential computing, is protection of data in use and TE that's anchored in hardware, and basically the hypervisor. Although it's not explicit, I'm not sure if I have to reread if it's explicitly stated, is not part of the TCB. And something like Nitro or other solutions, if that's should we care about, um, solutions that include the hypervisor to score them? And the concern I have is more about diluting the definition of confidential computing that the CCC has put out there and has been promoting for years. Just food for thought. Just something that kind of really hit me immediately. The reason I'm saying this is that I had comments from customers who definitely was a key element for them, especially in the context of sovereign cloud or like basically the hypervisor being not considered as being out of the TCP is fundamental for them as a requirement to consider a solution to be really confidential. Just general comment there. Not expecting agreement or disagreement, but just a thought there.
Yeah, I haven't been part of the CCC as long as quite a few of you have. So for me, I'm literally coming in to help bring a little bit of my expertise around things like sovereignty and how do we sort of accomplish that. So for me, when I hear sovereignty, particularly in an architectural or cloud perspective, it is where the controls have been shifted around. That's really what it's all about, is command and control. If you've done any Intel work or you've done any DoD type work, like there's this C2 stuff that you want, command and control. And so in cloud in particular, we've had to figure out how to like break certain controls that we have and give half of it to the customer or give a piece of it to a partner or something. Then we call it sovereign cloud or sovereign controls. Like all these, the word sovereignty just means that our lawyers have agreed with us that the customer has control, a partner has custody, and we have possession. The possession, custody, and control is the only way we can measure sovereignty right now at any level around the world. There's no law on the books that we can
No,
look
of
to
course,
call
yeah.
sovereignty. No, but I'm saying that point because I think it makes it really clear as to when we talk about confidential to me is this enabling technology. You couldn't do sovereign things in a lot of places without just moving the cloud back to the customer, right? I mean, because of that need for possession, custody, and control separation. So I'm hopeful that along this journey, we can find a way to, like, you know, create some kind of normalcy around what's confidential and what's sovereign. And to me, it's an implementation detail. It's not a technical detail. So I think when we come to regulations, like in France, for example, you have Secnum Cloud. Secnum Cloud was built upon a sovereign cloud built by Google and Thales for the French government, and so everything below that is garbage to them now. So I think trying to get them to understand, like, no, there's still lots of great use cases for CC that have nothing to do with national security or national sovereignty.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think it's outside of that, intelligence or kind of security, like national security thing, like that. It's more like financial institute, like industry or healthcare, for example, for the privacy of the patient's records, etc. So, but agreed. Yeah.
Cool. We have 12 minutes left. We went through a couple of things a little quick, which is fine. I always take time back. It's always good. It's like money. I always like to get some back. So any, Raman, go ahead.
Yes, I have comments on the previous topic. By the way, thank you, Eb, and you, Solomon, to provide more context on that. I've not been around CCC also, like from the very beginning, and yes, I'm not quite sure that we should be overly protective of the kind of original CCC statements or even original CCC goals. I was in particular, but my team as well in Red Hat, we were challenging CCC strategy, and I served a little bit on the board as well at the end of 2025. Like, we should be adaptive, and I think we shouldn't create these boundaries necessarily, and we should assume that in scope should be like everything possible. Like, I don't see right now like things like TPMs are in scope of in this framework that you put in place. I think that should be, because it's largely driven by customers and by real life, implementations, and by real life use cases that customers would like to explore. I agree, though, that it should be graded, and that's why the framework that we put together sounds very good for the two purposes. First of all, the basic understanding of these different, levels of trust or different levels of assurances, right? But I would suggest we keep them as broad as possible, also to support those conversations with standards bodies and also with customers, of course. Okay, this is confidential computing. May not be the like true confidential computing, but somehow connected to it, maybe at a lower level of assurance, but again, to educate them better. I found it's like impractical if we say, hey, these guys are not doing the true confidential computing because this is the true confidential computing, right? So we should be like more flexible in educating those. So this is the one. And second, for very quick, for the national bodies and etc. I fully agree that bringing something to the ISO level would be a nice goal to have. I don't think we have anything at the moment that's at that level. Yes, we have something around CPMs, I believe, but not necessarily the TEs and broader confidential computing. And also we can use national bodies to as a window to these ISOs and high level standards. I can bring my personal example. We work on the European standards around CRA and AI Act right now, but also we considering partnering with the ISO level that we call GTC Joint Technical Committees with them to bring it up to the higher level and to inform standards like 40,000 if it comes to AI. I mean, just a random example, but to exemplify how we can starts small with a maybe national or regional things and then bring it up to the ISO level. Yeah, thanks.
That's a good point. I appreciate that. And I had one follow on to it. So I like the idea of going after an ISO as well. It's really good to sort of practice once before we go to the ISO dance. It's a pretty long dance.
Oh,
So
yeah.
making sure we're comfortable with at least collectively, like we figure our shit out. We
Yeah.
proved it at least one or two bodies that make sense to
Agreed.
us, and then we're like, let's go to the
Yeah.
ISO. But it gives us a long-term goal. I think that's a
It's a
really
North
good way to do
Star.
it.
I meant it, the
It's a
GB
good
meant it,
start.
meant it as a North Star, not as a something
Yeah,
before.
that's
Yeah.
the third horizon. We got to do
Yeah.
Horizon 1 and 2 first, right?
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
and I think that's great. And I think the other part that would be really just something to consider. So in things like HSMs and key management systems, anything crypto these days, right? You have these different level of assurances or levels of verification and validation for certain types of classification of information. So like every industry does it different. Government's pretty straightforward. Like you have your secret, top secret, super ultra rainbow shit, and like there's a different technology allowed up to a certain level. And only a couple companies ever do all the work to go to that top level to get the one or two deals that
Right.
are really expensive. They're worth it in the end. But like, so that highest level of assurance, I think from what I can understand, what we're looking for so far, the AMD, the Intel, the sort of the approach done at the core level, they're going to be higher up in that level than, let's say, other pieces that don't include a TPM or don't include some kind of root of trust that is also verified, because it's all Legos, right? It's just Lego pieces. So the point of my statement is, I think there's going to be a class of systems that need to come out the other end that are very high level, the highest assurance. But then there's going to be this whole band in between on on this framework where it's like, and then there's everybody that's sort of like it's the mom and pop. Everybody buys it because I just want confidentiality. I don't know all the details of it versus like the NSA cares, right? How it's done. So that's just my
Can I
point.
add?
I think we have a
Yeah,
band
yeah,
of
totally agree.
assurances.
Yeah, and if I may to add to that, so agreed. So I think that definitely like there are different levels, but I think we should not lose also sight of um I think AI really changes a lot, right? So and I see it, and again, this is really feedback from customers as I've been in meetings. I'm not talk I'm really thinking CCC here. I'm wearing my CCC hat, right? As in like how no, I mean it like we are here to enable this, right? Because we can there's like and I've been talking to my Intel counterpart, and it's like we can compete. It's not an issue. That like there are other things that like and NVIDIA as well, obviously, but the the AI, the GPU, the extended trust boundaries to these endpoint storage, for that matter, right? For example, if you implement like without getting to, I know it's implementation, but thinking holistically as a system, and it's no longer like just a CPU. That's critical. And the other thing is that as well, I see asks about, for example, confidential computing on edge, right? So for telcos, for where it's basically, they have and other things like automotive. And so I just want to make sure we don't just think data center. That's one thing that as a thought here. So if you guys haven't been necessarily exposed to that, so
Yes. Yeah, it's wanting to go everywhere. I mean, AI is
yeah.
going everywhere. You want
And
an air
confidential, and
gap
the
system.
need for confidentiality, right? Like even imagine, I don't know, in many years, like it will be, the how to protect the prompt on a Windows laptop, like so the privacy of the user. I don't know, I'm just coming like that potentially could happen, right? So or whatever it might be as a device, right? So yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Any other topics or comments on that?
Just a couple. Sorry, Michael. Did you want to go?
Oh no, I was just gonna ask real quick. So did we settle on like a LinkedIn message that we want to send out or?
I saw yours. I'm cool with it. I think I said yay.
Okay.
We
All
just
right.
good.
I wasn't sure if
That's
we wanted to share it here or not, but that's fine as well. I can just send it out into the chat.
Okay, cool. That'd be good. Mark?
Yeah, just super quick. There is an ISO confidential computing group, but I don't really see much work published by them. Is anybody here on the tech on or part of that already?
I was not even aware of it, to be completely honest. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a draft standard.
Huh.
It's
Really?
kind of not. Well, let me not call it a draft standard. It's called like a draft group, and it was formed last year. I'd reached out to them to try and get connected and got nowhere. And you're right. You know, ISO is slow. ANSI is even slower. Been on X9, 119, and stuff like that. Good God.
Do you have the link by any chance? I made the quick search.
You can
I don't know.
Google it. It's and it's kind of my fear with it was that from what I saw of it, that they were kind of going down this path of looking at it through the lens of like the old school enclaves, you know, vis-a-vis SGX kind of models and stuff like that. And there was a kind of an academic group that was sort of looking at it as well out of Germany. So what I'll do, I can I don't know, is there a Slack channel I can get on for this? It's part of the I'll jump on that and I'll dig that out later. And then earlier this week or last week, NIST published recognition of confidential computing. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, into a standard related to key management and encryption standards. It's like 8587, I think. It's an IR. It's a draft IR guide on there. What was nice about that was in the presentation on to the members. They basically said for high side processing, you can use either a HSM, a TPM, or confidential computing, and that was like fantastic.
Whoa, that's a big blessing.
Yes, exactly. So it's like thin end of the wedge. It's not like a full endorsement, but it's kind of, you know, very handy to have that.
Yeah, well, so, if you can grab any of that and send it to the chat.
Yeah, I'll chuck it up there as well. Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, because it's in all our interest to amplify that.
Indeed. Awesome. All right, gents, it's 1 minute till, so we'll wrap it up here. Thanks again for joining the inaugural semi-unorganized first meeting. We'll do better next time.
Yeah, it was good there.
No, good work. Good conversation. Good mission.
Cheers. All right, cheers. Bye.
And thanks, guys.